celebrate failures because we're never going to find the things that work if we don't try new things all the time.
Welcome to Stickology. My guest today is Tom Hassell, president of Life is Good, the original positive lifestyle brand with a simple, powerful mission to spread optimism. Tom has played a pivotal role in steering the company's growth, helping to double its revenue between 2019 and 2021 by quickly adapting to consumers' needs. He's an expert in adaptation, technology, and innovation as tools to building a successful, optimistic corporate culture. And I'm very excited to learn from him today. Tom, thanks so much for joining us.
I'm so happy to be with you today, Stephen.
Well, let's dig in. Life is Good went from selling shirts out of a van to an international brand. What are the key things that the company has done to keep the founder's original culture authentic as you've grown?
Sure thing. Well, that foundational story is really important, so I'll go back there for a minute. So our founders, Bert and John Jacobs, spent 5 years traveling up and down the East Coast selling t-shirts out of a van, as you mentioned, and they'd be the first to tell you that they were not particularly successful because this was before they came up with the concept of Life is Good. But on one of the long drives home, they started talking about the fact that everybody then, and still true today, we get bombarded with negative news in the media. And so they started wondering if they could come up with an easy way to help people focus on the good. So they got home and they sat down and they came up with a whole bunch of different optimistic, positive works of art, taped them up on the wall of their apartment, and then did what only came natural, which was to throw a keg party. And they invited their friends in the course of that party to vote for their favorite work of art. And at the end of the night, it was very clear that the overwhelming majority had chosen what now is an iconic work of art, which is our stick figure, who we call Jake, with the three powerful words, Life is Good, underneath. So with $78 left in their checking account, they printed 48 shirts with that artwork, went onto the streets of Boston, and they sold those shirts faster than they had ever sold 4 dozen shirts before. And they knew they were onto something because all walks of life were stopping and looking and enjoying the positive, affirming message. And that was the beginning of Life is Good. How we've managed to hold on to that spirit is today, every week of the year, we create 60 original works of art, all of which have a positive, optimistic message. That is the lifeblood of our business. We've expanded well beyond t-shirts, and we print our art and message on a variety of canvases, as we call them today. But it's the act of putting that positivity out into the world, something fresh and new every week, that's core to who we are.
Well, I think that you could probably argue that there's no time that you could use more optimism than right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Your brand says optimism is a choice. How do you make sure that that philosophy feels genuine, isn't just a marketing slogan for your employees or for your customers?
Sure thing. So inside the company, we deal with challenges big and small all the time. And that's true of every company as well. Whether it's a big thing like the pandemic or the cost of cotton tripling unexpectedly for 18 months in 2022 and 3, that was a shock, to the current tariffs that have been in place since April. These are big things that can serve as sort of a punch to the solar plexus when you first learn about them. And the natural instinct could be to just curl up. And that's where optimism is a choice, and it's a practice. It's not something that comes naturally, and you have to choose to look at the opportunities rather than focusing on the obstacles. And if you can do that regularly, then you tend to find a path forward and find a way to continue to be successful. And as for our customers, the act of buying a graphic t-shirt that says to the world something, anything, is a pretty declarative act. And so when people choose to buy a positive, optimistic message and wear it so that the world can see it, that's a really great thing. And that in and of itself is a step towards having a positive mindset. And so, again, by creating 60 works of art a week, we're hopefully helping people make that choice.
Well, I certainly subscribe to that. Between this shirt and the other one that I wear and probably worn into the ground, which is kindness is free is not only a declaration to my kids, but also to pretty much anyone who I come across. So I think there's a lot to be said for that.
Well, thank you for your support.
The apparel industry is constantly changing, but Life is Good has certainly kept that core message for decades. How do you balance staying true to the values with the need to innovate, though, and keep your brand as fresh as possible?
So innovation has been key to our story for the last 6 years. I would say up through 2018, we were only able to share with our customers a tiny sliver of the vast catalog of artwork that the brothers built up over the decades. And we were constantly looking at different means of printing t-shirts, but it was in 2019 that the technology got good enough for us to undertake what we call print on demand. So we made a pretty sizable investment in 2019, and we realized that we would be able to dramatically expand what we showed to our customer at any given time, starting with our direct-to-consumer website, lifeisgood.com, and now offering that to wholesale customers as well. And just by exposing a larger percentage of the graphics in our catalog, our business went boom. And so since then, we have doubled down again and again on domestic decoration way before the tariffs, because we realized that being able to house blank inventory that we decorate after a customer places an order enabled us to have a much greater breadth of offering. And so now we have not only print on demand, but we have embroidery, we have hat production, we have some sewing capacity to put patches and things on products. And our biggest step to date was we made a 3-year investment to open a 500,000 square foot factory in New Hampshire, which we opened last year. And that's been a real game changer for us. And it's dramatically sped up the means by which we can produce goods domestically and get them into customers' hands quickly.
I'm curious that's a lot of innovation in a short period of time. What's been the impact on the culture within your organization?
At first, it was a bit of shock because we had not changed much in quite some time. We were producing overseas. We were buying goods, putting them on shelf and selling them sometimes quickly and sometimes slowly, and then clearing them out at the end of the season. And so moving to this on-demand mentality took a few years for people to get accustomed to. And particularly, maybe the biggest change we made was in 2021, we bought 102 robots. That brought a lot of anxiety into the workforce because people were concerned that we'd be eliminating jobs. And my commitment to the team was that we weren't going to eliminate a single job. We were just going to make the work they did more enjoyable and of a higher caliber. And thankfully that proved to be the case, because people who used to walk up and down aisles looking for a particular garment now are manufacturing products. And it's such a better type of work, and it's much more engaging and rewarding to bring things into being than to just go look for things that already exist. And we didn't lose a single job as a result of that. And so automation needs to be a part of every company, because it enables you to grow the top line faster than you grow the headcount. We've still grown our employee count even with all these automation efforts, but we've just grown the headcount slower than we've grown the revenue.
I imagine there's got to be a lot of upskilling that's happened as a result of that as well.
It is. For example, embroidery. It seems like that would be an easy thing to do, but as we've learned in the first year that we've undertaken it, that for every substrate upon which we embroider, you have to find the right combination of thread, needle, and backing. And while that's not particularly complex, we embroider on a lot of substrates. And so there's been about 9 months of R&D that we've undergone just to bring that online. And that's much less complex than printing on demand, where we were working with our factories to adjust the chemistry of the dyes that we were using, because it's actually quite tricky to get a cotton shirt to hold on to water-based ink, which is what you use in on-demand printing, versus the traditional plastisol that's used in screen printing. And so, we're doing better for the environment by printing this way. There's essentially no waste because we're only printing what's needed, but there has been a significant amount of R&D, and so that has been an upskilling effort, and that's also been an adjustment for folks. But now we're 6 years in, and I think people are just wondering, what's next, because we've been doing one thing after another.
Well, I guess it's good to keep people on their toes a little bit.
That's right.
Life is Good has been around for 30 years, and you, like you said, you've survived market crashes, a pandemic, tariffs, you name it, right? Can you share an example of when your optimistic culture was tested by a crisis and how the team used your internal philosophy to get through it?
We had just spent a year getting up to speed with print on demand and really hadn't gone to market with it when March of 2020 rolled in and everybody went home. And for a very brief period, we were worried, like most companies, that we might end up in bankruptcy court because our wholesale business went to zero. And at the time, wholesale was 2/3 of our business. We had just taken receipt of $20 million of cost inventory, and we had no one to ship it to. And we had already paid for those goods, and we were not in a good place. But we're an optimistic group. We have a lot of artists, and we had these brand new shiny machines. And so we got together and we said, okay, everybody in the world is going through the same thing right now. Let's make some t-shirts about it. And so we started with 5 simple graphics along the lines of stay calm, stay cool, stay home, and wash your paws with our dog Rocket in an old-fashioned bathtub. And we put those out 2 days after people went home. And that's how quickly we're able to bring goods to market, by creating the artwork and essentially putting virtual goods up on the website. And those 5 graphics sold like nothing we had ever seen. And we realized within about a week that we had a path forward, and we started making lots of graphics about the quarantine, with our best-selling graphic being Quarantini, which is basically a martini glass. And it seems like half America was wearing that on Zoom calls, and it saved the company, right? It was an extraordinary time because we were going through growth pains in the middle of a pandemic, which was bizarre because we had to put all new practices in place, keeping people 6 feet apart, doing temperature checks at the entrance of the factory. But that's when we started operating 24 hours a day, because we took the day shift and essentially split it in half to keep people spaced out further from one another. And we've never gone back. We've just added more people into both the day shift and the night shift as time has gone by.
In my book, Stickology, I talk about the gap where people feel connected but maybe not engaged with a brand. And so I'm curious, as a leader who's trying to move their company from maybe a superficial transaction to maybe more of a value-based and engagement brand, which is what you guys are, what's your best advice?
2 things. The first is what you just alluded to, which is having timely messages. So we can speak to something that's happening right now and get a product on our website within 48 hours. And that's really important. We seek to unify people, not divide people. And so anytime we see an opportunity to put a message like kindness is free out into the world, we do so, and we think that resonates with our consumer. The other thing that I think is perhaps more important is we believe that business is the most powerful tool to solve social problems. And like many other companies, we give back in a pretty profound way. And Bert & John were one of the earliest people out there to declare that 10% of net profits would go towards helping kids. Now, people help all kinds in many different ways, but Bert and John have always been interested in helping kids recover from trauma. And so more than 2 decades ago, we partnered with the organization that is now known as the Playmaker Project. And so our customers tell us over and over that they like us for 3 reasons. The first is quality product. The second are the fact that we have the optimistic, positive messages, and we always have something new. And the third is 10% for kids, because they know that their purchase has a purpose when they buy from us. So if they have a choice between buying from Life is Good or someone else, they tend to buy from us because of that.
So it's interesting. I was going to ask you about how you balance the necessities of being a for-profit business with certainly an emphasis on giving back through nonprofit channels. And it sounds like it's a natural extension and only an enhancement of your business beyond just all the good that you're doing for society. But it seems like it's something that is enhancing your business and the connection you have with customers. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, the two fit together hand in glove. So we have the for-profit business and the nonprofit Playmaker Project, both of which operate underneath the umbrella of the Life is Good brand. So the owners of the for-profit are the members of the nonprofit. They are co-located with us in our Boston office, and we work together. And they teach early childhood educators how to help kids heal from trauma, which is incredibly important work. And their job is never done because it's sad to say, but here in the wealthiest nation in the country, roughly a third of children suffer from what are called adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. And that's a very precarious point in a child's life. If they don't get the loving support of an adult who helps them recover from that, they end up by age 18 often being the worst version of themselves. Whereas if they do get the help they need, then they can be back on path to becoming the best version of themselves. So the only thing holding that group back is money. And so as we grow our business, we're able to fund them to do more work and train more people. And we've trained over 8,700 educators so far this year. And so the impact on children is many, many, many times greater than 8,700 people that we've trained. So it's great work, and it doesn't hold us back in any way, shape, or form. In fact, it encourages us to do even better.
Yeah, I love that. I wasn't as familiar with. I mean, I knew that you were attached to that, but I didn't know about the causes as deep as you just went into it. And as a parent, and certainly as a member of society, that resonates with me. I'm sure it resonates with lots of people out there. Yeah. Your customers are famous for keeping your products for years. I'm one of those people. Can you share one or two customer connection stories that shows how deep relationships can go beyond just the cash register?
Oh, sure thing. So one that comes to mind is a young woman by the name of Lindsay, who at age 10 was diagnosed with bone cancer. And so she went through a really tough time, and friends and family started giving her hats to, cover up the fact that she was losing her hair due to the treatment at that time. And one of them was a Life is Good, very soft beanie. And it wasn't just the comfort of the beanie that caused her to wear that day in, day out. It was the life affirming message, because she realized even at that young age that while life isn't perfect and life isn't always easy, life is good and it's worth fighting for. And so that's been one of many what we call fuel stories, where people have written in and let us know how at a particularly vulnerable point in their life, the Life is Good brand served as something that helped them get through that time. And they've held on to those goods for years as a memory of the fact that life is always worth fighting for.
Life is Good has a top rated employee culture. I'm curious, beyond the formal policies, what are the non negotiable daily behaviors that you and your senior leaders consistently model to truly reinforce the optimism philosophy?
The first is we open meetings by asking people to share something good that's going on in their life. It could be related to business, but more often than not, people share something good that's happening in their personal life. And it's fun, it relaxes people, and you get to know each other better in the process. That practice originated from the dinner table in Bert and John's house growing up. Their mom, in what they would describe as a dysfunctional household, would often start dinner by asking everybody to go around and share something good. And it's a great practice, and it does keep people focused on the good that's out there. Another thing, and this is so simple but it's so powerful, is to, instead of saying have to, we at every possible chance we say get to instead of have to. Because in order to survive, you have to breathe and you have to eat and you have to sleep. But beyond that, we're really lucky that we live in a free society and we get to do the things that we want to do, including the work that we choose to do. So just saying I get to speak to Stephen today, it's such a great way to frame things because it's positive and it makes you realize that everything you do is a choice, and we're lucky to have those choices. And that's a way of keeping people focused on the good. I would say something that's a little deeper is that creating an environment where people feel they have the opportunity to speak up and share their thoughts without fear of recrimination or being dismissed out of hand. And we certainly can't act on every idea, but the goal is to let people know if we're not going to pursue their idea and why, but to tell them to keep on swinging the bat and bringing ideas to the table. And so that, I think, is an important part of leading a team.
High-performing cultures minimize toxicity. How does Life is Good's philosophy, centered on kindness and choosing good, guide how you manage underperformance or deal with employees who are negatively impacted by the culture?
Toxic positivity is a thing, and it's a bad thing. And that is something we try to avoid at all costs. We absolutely acknowledge challenges. We just had our all hands meeting last week, and part of that was just describing the impact that tariffs are having on the business in general and on our business, and just being very transparent about the fact that we have some challenges ahead, just as we've faced challenges in the past, and that we need to work together to overcome them. As far as providing critical feedback to people, there's a wide spectrum upon which you can approach that. I would say on one end of the spectrum, that's the other end from us, would be Jensen Huang, CEO of NVIDIA. Very successful, terrific guy. Love listening to him speak and reading about him. His approach couldn't be more opposite than ours, though. He famously has 60 direct reports, 6-0, and therefore he cannot have one-on-ones with anyone. So all feedback, positive and negative, is expressed publicly in group meetings. And he feels that that's effective because everybody in the room learns when someone has done something wrong and they're given critical feedback. But that's a very different type of culture than what we have at Life is Good. So we tend to follow the tried and true practice of praising in public and giving critical feedback in private, but it's just as important. Both halves of that equation are critically important. You want to give credit where it's due, and you want to give people feedback when it needs to be given.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also subscribe to the idea of wanting to give feedback, especially positive feedback, as immediately as possible. Right? Not waiting for a review, not waiting for your one-on-one, but really taking the opportunity, if you see something that's going incredibly well, to acknowledge and certainly celebrate that, right?
100% agree.
Tom, you've alluded to a number of situations in which you deal with pressure. How do you personally choose optimism or use levity in challenging business moments? And what advice would you give to other executives who are trying to do just that?
So two things to answer that question. The first is, just for me personally, I've found that exercise is critical. I hit the gym 6 times a week, and for me, that gives me the energy to get through the day. I find that I have a lot more energy when I work out than when I don't. That may not be true for everybody, but it's just something that I found that I need to make time for. And so I would say, whatever it is that helps you as a leader be at your best throughout the day, you should make time for that. That's step one. But as far as using levity and optimism to get through the day, we tend to do things writ large. So for example, in our factory, we have a 200-foot long mural that just says everything is figureoutable along the wall. Now that's not grammatically correct, but it is funny, and it reminds everybody in a very large, profound way every day that we will figure out whatever it is that we're dealing with at the time. And it kind of just casts a funny spirit across the whole production floor.
I'm curious, you've given a few really good examples of bringing humor into situations, whether it be internally or externally. Have you worked in other organizations that have had a similar focus, or could you point to others that you think are doing just that?
It's funny. I've not worked in organizations that have used humor the way that Life is Good has. I've worked for some very high-functioning corporations. Ann Taylor, in particular, was a very well-run organization. But I have found the culture and the approach of Life is Good to be superior to any other company that I've worked for. And I think a big part of it is that, we're not afraid to bring humor into the workforce and into our art. A lot of the works of art we create are funny. And the tricky thing about humor is that if it's funny, somebody's going to be offended somewhere. And so, even though we're attempting to unify people, there is a tiny little bit of an edge to some of our art, and that's kind of the secret sauce. Because where 99 people may love a message, you have that one person who might say, I don't care for that, and hopefully they care for other things on the website if they don't care for that one. But I think everybody recognizes that we're trying to bring people together, not separate
No
people.
good deed goes unpunished. Is that kind of
There you go. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
as a business leader who's just starting out or trying to revitalize their company, what's your advice for building an amazing culture and a resilient brand that people will genuinely love the same way they do? Life is good.
Great question. I think the first thing is to develop a mission statement that's something just shy of to save the world, right? So our mission is to spread the power of optimism, which is pretty lofty, but it is actually descriptive of what we do, and it's a way of focusing and energizing and motivating our employees, myself included. It's great to go to work every day knowing that you're working to, help spread positivity and to help kids heal from trauma. So while not everybody's in this business of positive art and message, every business exists to make the world a better place, right? You're trying to solve a problem as a business. So on the grandest scale, what are you seeking to do as an organization if you do your job really well? And that should be your mission statement. So that, I think, is important. The other is to give back. Doing good is good for business. So what we've done with 10% for Kids has helped us more than any amount of money we've given to the Playmaker Project, both spiritually, just knowing that we're helping people, but also from our customers coming back to us over and over again because they love the fact that the purchase has a purpose. So I would encourage everybody to figure out a way to focus their efforts. I think giving back in any way is important, but focusing those efforts on one thing and doing it really well is really helpful. And then the final thing is to create a culture where it's okay to make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time. We try things that fail, and that's okay. And I try to celebrate failures because we're never going to find the things that work if we don't try new things all the time. And so when we do find something that works, we lean into it and go after it. But it's okay to make mistakes and just try something different the next day.
I love that. And by the way, it's also just a really good example of great leadership, because when people at the top are willing to admit their own mistakes or identify areas for improvement, it really opens up the floodgates for everyone below them to do just that as well, right?
I agree.
Yeah. Tom, this is really fun. A lot of really inspiring things that you guys are doing over there, and things that I think a lot of us would probably want to put in place in our own organizations as quickly as possible. So I appreciate you sharing a lot of these tidbits with us and spending time with us today.
Great. Stephen, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
That was a really inspiring conversation with Tom Hassell. Here are 3 of my biggest takeaways. Number 1, optimism is a strategic practice. Optimism isn't a passive trait. It's a daily choice and practice that can define any culture, using simple routines like opening every meeting by sharing something good and consciously replacing the phrase have to with get to. This commitment helps employees consistently focus on opportunities over obstacles. Number 2, feedback and accountability are part of optimism. An optimistic culture is not one that ignores problems. It's one that addresses them with a positive framework. Even when managing underperformance, it's important to focus on providing support to help employees become the best versions of themselves. And number 3, be as timely as possible when connecting with customers. It's critical to have the speed and insight to address what your customers are experiencing right now to achieve true engagement. By designing your business model to deliver a positive, timely message that speaks directly to a shared moment, this could be cultural or universal, you transform a simple sale into an emotional connection